The sterile white of Dr. Ramirez's office seemed to amplify the pounding in my ears. Pancreatic cancer, he said gently, handing me a tissue. Stage 2, operable, but the surgery will be extensive. I numbly took the tissue, my mind already racing. What's the cost? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Doctor Ramirez explained the procedure, the hospital stay, the aftercare. He quoted a figure $34,000, and my heart sank. My husband, bless his soul, had passed away 5 years ago, leaving me what I thought was a modest nest egg. $34,000 seat was more than I had readily available. I'll need to speak with my children, I managed, forcing a weak smile. I called Rebecca first. She'd always been the most level-headed of my three. Rebecca, darling. It's Mom, I started, trying to keep my voice steady. I have some difficult news. I told her about the diagnosis, the surgery, the cost. Silence stretched across the line before she finally spoke. Oh, Mom, I'm so sorry, she said, her voice tight. That's terrible. There was a pause, a hesitation I couldn't quite place. Julian and I were just about to put a down payment on a bigger house. She continued, her voice laced with something I couldn't decipher. We've stretched ourselves thin already. I just don't see how we could possibly. She trailed off. I understand, dear, I replied softly, a lump forming in my throat. Don't worry, I'll figure something out. Next, I called Marcus, my practical, business-minded son. Surely he'd be able to offer some assistance. He listened patiently as I relayed the news, but his response mirrored Rebecca's. Mom, that's awful news. I'm so sorry, he said, his voice sympathetic yet distant. I wish I could help, but I've just invested heavily in a new startup. It's all tied up right now. Incredibly high risk, high reward. I can't afford to pull anything out. A flicker of disappointment ran through me. I see, I said quietly. Well, thank you for listening. Marcus. My last call was to Patricia, my youngest, always so full of life and empathy. Perhaps she could offer a glimmer of hope. Patricia, sweetheart, I began, my voice heavy with weariness. I told her the news, bracing myself for her reaction. Mom, oh my God, that's horrible, she cried. I'm so sorry. I wish I could help, but Michael lost his job last month, and we're barely making ends meet. We're relying on credit cards just to get by. My last thread of hope frayed. It's all right, Patricia, I said, trying to sound reassuring despite the wave of despair washing over me. Don't you worry. Everything will be fine. I hung up the phone, the weight of my diagnosis pressing down on me, heavier now with the added burden of my children's inability to help. I sat alone in the quiet of my living room, tears silently tracing paths down my cheeks. $34,000. It felt like an insurmountable mountain. What was I going to do? I wandered into my husband's study, a room I rarely entered since his passing. I sat at his desk, running my hand over the smooth wood. I missed him terribly, his quiet strength, his unwavering support. He'd always taken care of everything. A small locked drawer caught my eye. I'd never noticed it before. Curiosity piqued. I searched for the key, finally finding it tucked away in a small box of his belongings. My hands trembled as I unlocked the drawer. Inside, nestled amongst old letters and photographs, was a thick folder. I pulled it out, my heart pounding in my chest. It was filled with documents, investment statements, and financial records. I started to read, my eyes widening with each passing line. Stocks, bonds, real estate holdings, offshore accounts numbers swam before me. $12 million. 12 million. My husband, my quiet, unassuming husband, had amassed a fortune. A wave of emotions washed over me, shock, disbelief, then a slow burn of anger. He had kept this from me, protected me, he would have said. But now, facing this daunting diagnosis alone, I felt betrayed. And then, another emotion began to surface. Resolve. I wiped the tears from my face, a new strength coursing through me. I would have this surgery. I would beat this cancer. And my children, would learn a valuable lesson. A lesson about family, about sacrifice, and about the true meaning of wealth. I wouldn't tell them about the money. Not yet. I needed time to think, to plan. But one thing was certain. Things were about to change. I picked up the phone again, this time dialing Dr. Ramirez's office. Yes, Dr. Ramirez, I said, my voice firm and steady. I'd like to schedule that surgery as soon as possible. Rain lashed against the windshield, blurring the streetlights into hazy halos. I gripped the steering wheel, the leather cold and slick beneath my fingers. Rebecca's words echoed in my ears, sharp and dismissive. Mom, Julian, and I just can't afford it right now. We have our own bills, and the baby's on the way. $34,000. That's all it would take. $34,000 to remove the tumor gnawing at my pancreas, to buy me more time. And my own children couldn't, or wouldn't, help. I navigated the familiar route home, the wipers fighting a losing battle against the downpour. The rhythmic swoosh, swoosh, swoosh mirrored the dull ache in my chest. It wasn't as if they didn't have the money. Rebecca and Julian both had good jobs. They'd recently bought a new car, a sleek, silver SUV I'd seen parked in their driveway during my last visit. It's an investment, Rebecca had explained, patting the hood. Much safer for the baby. Safer than their mother's life, apparently. I pulled into my driveway, the house dark and silent. The rain had eased to a drizzle, leaving the world slick and glistening. I sat in the car for a moment, the engine ticking softly, gathering the strength to go inside. This house, this life I'd built it all, brick by painstaking brick. Years of scrimping and saving, of working double shifts while my husband, bless his soul, chased his entrepreneurial dreams. He'd always been the optimistic one, certain that his next big idea would be the one. And then, just when things were finally looking up, a heart attack. Gone, just like that. He left me with a mountain of debt, a dilapidated house, and 3 young children to raise. Don't worry, he'd whispered in his final moments, clutching my hand. I've taken care of everything. I hadn't understood then what he meant. I thought he meant the life insurance policy, the meager sum that barely covered the funeral expenses. I was wrong. The lawyer's words still rang in my ears, spoken just a week after the diagnosis. Mrs. Peterson, your husband was a remarkably astute investor. He diversified his portfolio into technology stocks, real estate, even cryptocurrency. The total value of his estate as well. It's considerable. Over $12 million. $12 million. A number so large it felt unreal, like something from a movie. I'd sat there stunned, while the lawyer droned on about trusts and asset allocation. $12 million. Enough to cover my surgery 100 times over. Enough to buy Rebecca a fleet of those silver SUVs. Enough to change everything. A bitter laugh escaped my lips, the sound swallowed by the quiet hum of the car. They thought I was broke. They pitied me, their poor, struggling mother. They'd offered me platitudes and empty promises, but not a single dollar. We'll be there for you, Mom, in any way we can, Patricia had said, her voice choked with emotion, just not financially. Marcus, ever the pragmatist, had suggested I look into government assistance programs. There are resources available, Mom. You just have to know where to look. I turned off the engine, the silence suddenly heavy and oppressive. Reaching into the glove compartment, I pulled out the small, velvet box the lawyer had given me. Inside, nestled on a bed of satin, lay a single key, the key to a safe deposit box, the key to my future, the key to their comeuppance. I clutched it tightly, the cool metal a comforting weight in my palm. The rain had stopped, and a sliver of moon peeked through the clouds, casting a pale, ethereal glow on the wet pavement. It was time to go inside, to start planning, to reclaim my life, and to teach my children a lesson they wouldn't soon forget. They thought I needed them. They were wrong. I had 12 million reasons to prove them wrong, and I would. Rain lashed against the windows, mirroring the storm inside me. I sat on the edge of our bed, the floral comforter rumpled and cold. Rebecca's words echoed in my ears. Mom, we just can't. Julian and I have our own expenses. A new baby is expensive. $34,000. That's all it would take to potentially save my life. And my own children, the ones I raised and nurtured, couldn't or wouldn't spare a fraction of it. I picked up the framed photo on my nightstand. It was taken on our last family vacation, before the kids grew up and drifted away. Before Michael, my hand trembled as I traced the outline of his smiling face. Michael, my rock, my love gone too soon. He'd always been the pragmatic one, the planner, the quiet force behind our family. He'd handled the finances, always reassuring me that we were comfortable, that I didn't need to worry about anything. Focus on the kids, love, he'd say, squeezing my hand. I've got this. A flicker of a memory sparked in my mind, a conversation we'd had years ago, tucked away in the recesses of my mind. We were sitting on this very bed, discussing retirement plans. Michael had been unusually quiet, a thoughtful furrow in his brow. There's something I need to tell you. He'd started, hesitant. Something I haven't shared with anyone, not even the kids. He'd taken a deep breath. I've been making some alternative investments. High risk, high reward. I wanted to build a nest egg, a safety net for us, for our future. At the time, I'd been more focused on the kids' upcoming college applications, their anxieties, their dreams. As long as we're comfortable, Michael, I'd said, dismissing it with a wave of my hand. I trust you. He hadn't elaborated, and I hadn't pressed. It was just Michael, always thinking ahead, always looking out for us. The conversation had faded into the background noise of family life. Now, though, the memory resonated with a chilling clarity. Alternative investments. High risk, high reward. What exactly had he meant? I opened the top drawer of his nightstand, the one I'd left untouched since his passing. Inside, beneath a pile of handkerchiefs and old cufflinks, I found a small, leather-bound notebook. My heart pounded as I flipped through the pages, filled with cryptic notes, stock symbols, and dates. I didn't understand most of it, but one entry stood out, scrawled in Michael's familiar handwriting. Offshore account Cayman Islands. Below it was a string of numbers, an account number, and a name. Vanguard Trust Company. Suddenly, the pieces began to fall into place. Michael's late-night phone calls, the hushed conversations, the occasional overseas trips he'd claimed were for business conferences. He'd been building something, a secret fortune, a plan B he'd never told me about. But why the secrecy? Why not share this with me, with his own family? The thought gnawed at me, a knot of confusion, and hurt tightening in my chest. I spent the next few hours poring over his notes, searching for clues, for answers. The rain continued to batter the windows, the wind howling like a mournful cry. Finally, exhausted and overwhelmed, I stumbled upon a small locked box tucked away in the back of the closet. It was heavy, metallic, cold to the touch. I fumbled with the combination lock, trying different sequences of numbers, birth dates, anniversaries. Nothing. Just as I was about to give up, I remembered a number scribbled on the inside cover of Michael's notebook, a seemingly random sequence of 6 digits. I dialed them into the lock, and with a click, the box sprang open. Inside, nestled amongst a stack of documents, was a single keycard and a folded letter. The letter was addressed to me in Michael's handwriting. My hands shook as I unfolded the crisp paper. "My dearest," it began, "if you're reading this, it means I'm gone, and something unexpected has happened. I've made provisions for you, a safety net I hope you'll never need. The keycard grants access to a safe deposit box at Vanguard Trust in the Cayman Islands. Inside, you'll find everything explained. I love you more than words can say, always and forever, Michael." Tears streamed down my face as I read his words, a mixture of grief, relief, and a strange sense of betrayal. He'd kept this from me, this secret fortune, this plan. Why? Was it to protect me, to test me, or was there something more, something I hadn't yet grasped? With trembling hands, I picked up the keycard, its metallic surface cool against my skin. It felt heavy, weighted with the secrets it held, the answers I desperately sought. The Cayman Islands, $12 million. The numbers swam in my head, a dizzying, disorienting revelation. My children, my own flesh and blood, had refused me a mere $34,000, while their father, my beloved Michael, had secretly amassed a fortune beyond my wildest dreams. The rain had stopped. A sliver of moonlight peeked through the clouds, casting long, eerie shadows across the room. I clutched the keycard tightly, a new resolve hardening within me. This changed everything. It was time to make some plans of my own. Rain lashed against the kitchen window, mirroring the storm brewing inside me. I dialed Rebecca's number, my hand trembling slightly. When she answered, her voice was bright, almost jarringly cheerful. "Mom, how are you feeling?" I took a deep breath. "Not great, sweetie. The doctor confirmed it's pancreatic cancer, and I need surgery." A beat of silence hung in the air before she responded. "Oh, Mom, I'm so sorry." Her voice lacked the warmth I craved, a coldness creeping in. "How much will the surgery cost?" she asked, her tone laced with a practicality that felt strangely detached. $34,000, I replied, my voice barely a whisper. 34,000, she echoed. "Mom, that's a lot of money. Are you sure this is absolutely necessary?" Her question stung, a sharp slap across the face. Necessary. My life hung in the balance, and she was questioning the necessity of life-saving surgery. I swallowed the lump forming in my throat, trying to steady my voice. "Yes, Rebecca, it's necessary," the doctor said. Without it, I trailed off, unable to voice the grim alternative. Right, she said quickly, her tone shifting again. "So, what's the plan? Will insurance cover it?" I explained that insurance would cover a portion, but the $34,000 was my out-of-pocket responsibility. Another silence stretched between us, filled only by the rhythmic drumming of the rain. Finally she spoke, her voice hesitant. "Mom, that is a huge amount. Julian and I just put a down payment on a new car. We're a bit stretched thin right now." My heart sank. A new car. They could afford a new car, but not to help save their mother's life. "I understand, dear," I managed, my voice surprisingly calm. The disappointment was a dull ache spreading through my chest. "Perhaps you could borrow some from Julian's parents. They're quite well off, aren't they?" I suggested, grasping at straws. I don't think that's a good idea, Mom," she stammered. They're quite particular about their finances. It would create an awkward situation." I closed my eyes for a moment, the image of their gleaming new car flashing before my mind. "I see," I said quietly. "Look, Mom, I'm really sorry," Rebecca continued, her voice laced with a nervous energy. "I wish there was something I could do. Maybe you could sell some of your jewelry. I know you have some nice pieces." Her words twisted inside me, a cruel suggestion disguised as a solution. "Sell my memories, the tangible remnants of a life built with their father, a life they seemed so eager to dismiss now that it couldn't provide for them." "Thank you for the suggestion, Rebecca," I replied, keeping my tone even. "I'll consider it." The conversation dwindled after that, punctuated by strained pleasantries and empty promises to stay in touch. When I hung up the phone, the silence in the kitchen felt heavier than before. The rain continued its relentless assault on the windows, and I stared out at the gray, swirling sky, a cold emptiness settling in my stomach. My own children, the ones I had nurtured and loved unconditionally, were unwilling to help me in my time of need. They valued their material possessions, their comfortable lives, more than their own mother's life. I walked to the living room, the familiar comfort of the space now tainted with a bitter aftertaste. I sat on the worn sofa, tracing the patterns in the floral upholstery. My gaze drifted to the framed photograph on the mantelpiece, a picture of my late husband, Thomas, his eyes twinkling with mischief, his arm wrapped around my waist. He had always been my rock, my confidant, the one person who truly understood me. He had also been a shrewd investor, quietly building a portfolio that had far exceeded our modest lifestyle. He had left everything to me, a secret nest egg I hadn't touched, a cushion for a rainy day I never anticipated would come. $12 million. The number echoed in my mind, a sudden, unexpected lifeline. $12 million, enough to cover my surgery, and so much more. A flicker of resolve ignited within me, a small flame of defiance in the face of my children's indifference. I wouldn't beg. I wouldn't plead. I wouldn't sell the precious memories of my life with Thomas. I would take care of myself. I would use the resources he had left me, the fruits of his hard work and foresight, and then I would make them understand. I would show them the true meaning of family, the true cost of their callous disregard. The rain outside had stopped, and a sliver of sunlight peeked through the clouds. I looked out at the merging brightness, a strange sense of calm washing over me. The game, I realized, had just begun. The phone rang twice before Marcus picked up. "Mom, everything okay?" he asked, his voice tight. "Not exactly," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "The doctor confirmed it's pancreatic cancer, stage 2. They want to operate as soon as possible." A beat of silence hung between us. Then, "Oh, Mom, I'm so sorry," he said, but the words lacked warmth. I could practically hear the gears turning in his head, calculating the disruption to his life, the potential cost. And the cost, he finally asked, the question I knew was coming. $34,000 out of pocket. I replied flatly. Another pause, longer this time. "Wow," he breathed. "That's a lot. Have you, explored all your options?" "Options," I repeated, a small bitter laugh escaping my lips. "Like what?" "Marcus, selling my remaining kidney on the black market." He chuckled nervously. "No, Mom, of course not. But, honestly, have you looked into going to Mexico? I heard they have good hospitals, much cheaper." My blood ran cold. Mexico. He wanted me, his mother facing a life-threatening illness, to go to Mexico to save a few dollars. The anger I had been suppressing began to simmer. "Marcus," I said, my voice dangerously low, "I need surgery. Life-saving surgery. Not a cut-rate vacation package." I know," he said quickly, backpedaling. "It's just 34,000 is a significant amount. Rebecca and I were just talking about putting a down payment on a bigger house. The market is really hot right now, and we don't want to miss out." Rebecca and Julian. Of course, their ever-expanding needs always came first. Suddenly, I felt a strange calmness wash over me. This conversation, this blatant disregard for my well-being, was solidifying something within me. A plan, a quiet resolve, was taking shape. "I understand," I said, my voice deceptively serene. "Don't worry about it, Marcus. I'll figure something out." He seemed relieved, almost eager to get off the phone. "Okay, great, Mom. Let me know if there's anything I can do, like maybe help you research those Mexican hospitals," he offered weakly. "I will," I replied, the words dripping with a sweetness that belied the storm brewing inside me. We said our goodbyes, and I hung up the phone, a chilling smile playing on my lips. He wouldn't have to worry about helping me at all. I opened my laptop, the familiar glow of the screen a small comfort in the dim room. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, then began to type an email to Mr. Henderson, my late husband's financial advisor, a man who held the key to a secret my children knew nothing about, a secret that would change everything. Mr. Henderson, I typed, I need to discuss liquidating some assets. I'm facing some unexpected medical expenses. I paused, considering my words carefully. Let's say, to the tune of $34,000. I hit send, the quiet whoosh of the outgoing message echoing the seismic shift happening within my own life. This was just the beginning. The next call was to Patricia, my youngest. I braced myself, expecting a similar response to Marcus's. "Mom, is everything all right?" she asked, her voice laced with concern. It was a performance, I knew, but I played along. "I got the diagnosis," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "It's cancer." Patricia gasped dramatically. "Oh my God, Mom, I'm so sorry. What are they saying? What can we do?" We piqued my interest. Was she actually offering help? "They want to operate," I explained, "but it's going to cost $34,000. Silence. Then, $34,000, she echoed, her voice tight. "That's a lot. Are you sure there's no other way?" There it was. The underlying selfishness, masked thinly by feigned concern. "Not really," I replied, weariness creeping into my voice. "Unless you have a spare 34 grand lying around," I asked, a touch of sarcasm lacing my words. She laughed nervously. "Oh, Mom, you know I don't. Things are so tight right now. We're barely making ends meet with the new baby and everything. The new baby, the constant justification for her and her husband's financial woes." "I see," I said quietly, my heart hardening with each passing second. "Well, don't worry about it, sweetie. I'll manage." "Are you sure?" she asked, her voice dripping with false concern. "Absolutely," I replied, my voice firm. "I wouldn't want to burden you with my problems." The conversation ended quickly after that, Patricia promising to call again soon. I knew she wouldn't. As I hung up, a wave of exhaustion washed over me, but beneath the tiredness, a new sense of purpose was emerging. I walked over to the window, looking out at the sprawling city lights. My husband, Charles, had built a good life for us, a life secured by smart investments and careful planning, a life my children knew nothing about. He'd always said, "Let them make their own way. Let them think they're building their own empires." He'd entrusted me with a secret, a safety net not just for me, but for them, if they ever truly needed it. They didn't need it. They'd made that abundantly clear. This $34,000 wasn't just for surgery. It was a test they had failed spectacularly, and now it was time to enact the next phase of Charles's plan, a plan he'd devised years ago, just in case. He'd called it his insurance policy, and it was about to pay out. Not to them, though. To me. The dial tone buzzed in my ear, each beep a tiny hammer against the fragile wall I'd built round my heart. I took a deep breath and pressed the call button for Patricia, my youngest. "Patricia, darling." "It's me," I said, my voice wavering slightly. "I had some more news from the doctor today. They confirmed it's pancreatic cancer, and the surgery, well, It's going to be expensive. There was a pause, a small intake of breath on the other end of the line. "Oh, Mom," Patricia said, her voice filled with genuine concern. "I'm so sorry. How much are they talking about?" $34,000. I replied, bracing myself for the inevitable. Patricia gasped. "God, that's so much money," she whispered, the worry evident in her tone. "Mom, I don't know what to say." A lump formed in my throat, not from the cancer, but from the familiar sting of disappointment. "It's all right, sweetheart," I said, forcing a lightness into my voice I didn't feel. "I just wanted to let you know what was happening." "I wish I could help," Patricia said, her voice thick with emotion. "We're so stretched thin right now. Julian's business has been slow, and with the kids you know how it is." I did know. I knew the endless cycle of bills and expenses, the constant juggling act of family life. I'd lived it myself for years, providing for my children, ensuring they had everything they needed. And now, facing my own mortality, I found myself needing their help, only to be met with empty pockets and apologetic murmurs. "It's okay, Patricia," I repeated, my voice softer this time. "Don't worry about it. We'll figure something out." We chatted for a few more minutes, exchanging pleasantries, avoiding the elephant in the room, the looming cost of my surgery, the silent question of who would help me shoulder the burden. As I hung up the phone, a strange calm washed over me. The disappointment had faded, replaced by a steely resolve. I walked over to my desk, opened a drawer, and pulled out a thick file. Inside were documents detailing my late husband's investments, a portfolio he'd meticulously built over the years. Stocks, bonds, real estate, a fortune we'd never touched, a safety net for a rainy day. The rainy day had arrived. $12 million. That was the number staring back at me, a stark contrast to the $34,000 I needed for my surgery. It was more than enough to cover the medical bills, more than enough to secure my future, more than enough to, well, let's just say I had a few ideas. A small smile played on my lips as I began to formulate a plan. This money, this unexpected windfall, wouldn't just save my life. It would change everything. It would give me the power to rewrite the narrative, to reshape the relationships I had with my children. They thought I was a burden, a financial liability. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. I reached for my phone again, this time dialing the number of a reputable financial advisor. "Hello, Mr. Harrison," I said, my voice steady and confident. "I'd like to discuss some adjustments to my portfolio." The wheels were in motion. The surgery would happen, but the aftermath, the real story, was just beginning. My children had shown me their true colors. Now, it was my turn to show them mine. I had 12 million reasons to make sure they learned a valuable lesson about family, loyalty, and the true meaning of support. They thought they knew me, knew my financial situation. They had no idea what I was capable of, and that, my friends, was the most powerful weapon of all. The next call I made was to a luxury travel agent. "Yes, hello," I began, a hint of mischief in my voice. "I'm interested in booking a rather extended vacation. Something exclusive, perhaps a private island." The seed of my plan was planted, and I knew with chilling certainty that it would blossom into something they would never forget. Sunlight streamed through the kitchen window, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. I sat at the worn wooden table, nursing a cup of lukewarm tea, the porcelain cool against my fingertips. Rebecca's words echoed in my mind, sharp and dismissive. $34,000. Julian, and I just put a down payment on a new car. We can't afford to help you right now. I closed my eyes, the image of her perfectly manicured nails tapping against her phone screen as she delivered this news flashing behind my eyelids. Patricia hadn't been much better. Mom, we have Timmy's tuition payments due next month. There's just no way. Her voice, usually so bright and bubbly, had been strained, apologetic yet firm. And Marcus, my eldest, my practical, sensible Marcus, had simply said, $34,000 is a lot of money, Mom. I have my investments to think about. Investments, more important than his own mother's life. I took a slow sip of tea, the bitter taste mirroring the resentment blooming in my chest. $34,000, a sum that represented my life, my chance at survival, and to them, it was an inconvenience, a burden too heavy to bear. I thought of David, my late husband, and how he had tirelessly worked, meticulously saving and investing, always with the future in mind. He'd often say, "Penny saved is a penny earned," especially when it compounds over time. I smiled faintly. He would have scoffed at their excuses. He would have sold everything he owned to ensure my well-being. I opened the bottom drawer of the antique dresser that sat against the far wall, the one David had inherited from his grandmother. Inside, nestled amongst old photographs and yellowed letters, was a small, unassuming key. This key opened a safety deposit box, a secret David had shared with me only weeks before he passed. "This is for emergencies. Love," he'd whispered, his hand clutching mine. "Don't tell the children. They wouldn't understand." He'd been right. They hadn't understood. They still didn't. I retrieved the key and ran my thumb along its smooth, cool surface. Inside that box lay not only the funds for my surgery, but also a truth I had kept hidden for years. A truth that would change everything. David's investments had been far more successful than any of us had realized. He had a knack for spotting opportunities, a talent for turning a small sum into something substantial. He downplayed his successes, preferring a life of quiet comfort to ostentatious displays of wealth. The children had grown up believing we were comfortably middle class, unaware of the fortune their father had amassed. The safety deposit box contained documents outlining David's investments, stocks, bonds, real estate holdings, and a portfolio worth over $12 million. $12 million. Enough to cover my surgery 1,000 times over. Enough to change my life, and theirs forever. A wave of dizziness washed over me, the realization of this hidden wealth hitting me with the force of a physical blow. I had been living a lie, a life of perceived scarcity, while sitting on a gold mine. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. This changed everything. My children's refusal to help, their casual dismissal of my needs, had unveiled a deeper truth about their characters, a truth I might have otherwise remained blissfully ignorant of. It hurt, yes, a deep, throbbing ache in my heart, but it also ignited a spark of resolve within me. I would have my surgery. I would survive, and then I would teach my children a lesson they would never forget. A lesson about family, about loyalty, and about the true value of money. I slipped the key into my purse, a small, almost imperceptible smile playing on my lips. The sun, now lower in the sky, cast long shadows across the kitchen floor. I stood up, my joints creaking in protest, and began to clear the table. My phone buzzed. "It was Rebecca, Mom," she said, her voice laced with a hint of anxiety. "Julian and I were talking, and we've decided we can probably lend you some of the money after all." "How much did you say you needed again?" I paused, the phone pressed to my ear. The irony of the situation wasn't lost on me. Now, suddenly, they could find the money. Now, after dismissing my plea, they were offering help. "It's all right, Rebecca," I said, my voice calm and even. "Don't worry about it. I've taken care of it." "Taken care of it?" she repeated, confusion evident in her tone. "How? What do you mean?" I could almost hear the gears turning in her mind, trying to decipher my words. "I'll explain everything soon," I said, a hint of steel creeping into my voice. "But right now, I have some important things to do." I hung up the phone, a sense of anticipation bubbling within me. The game had begun, and I, for the first time in a long time, felt like I was holding all the cards. Tomorrow, I would go to the bank. Tomorrow, I would claim what was rightfully mine. And tomorrow, my children would get their first glimpse of the woman they thought they knew, the woman they had so easily dismissed. The crisp white sheets of the hospital bed felt cool against my skin. I woke to the rhythmic beep of the heart monitor, a steady pulse of life reaffirming the success of the surgery. Dr. Ramirez smiled warmly. "Everything went perfectly, Mrs. Caldwell. The tumor was removed successfully. You're going to be just fine." Relief washed over me, a wave so powerful I felt weak. "Thank you, doctor," I whispered, my voice still raspy from the anesthesia. "Truly, thank you." He patted my hand reassuringly. The financial department confirmed receipt of the full payment for the surgery. "You'll be able to recuperate here for a few days before going home." That payment, of course, had come directly from my own account, from the money my late husband, Thomas, had so diligently built over the years, the $12 million portfolio he'd cultivated from technology stocks and rental properties, a secret he'd entrusted only to me. I hadn't planned on revealing it, ever. But Rebecca and Julian's callous dismissal, their utter lack of concern for my well-being, had forced my hand. $34,000 was nothing to them. Julian had scoffed. "Really, Mom? That's all? We just put a down payment on a Tesla. Maybe next year." Rebecca had nodded in agreement, adding, "Julian's right. Our finances are a bit tight right now." Tight, indeed. Tight enough to prioritize a luxury car over their own mother's life. I closed my eyes, replaying Rebecca's words in my head. The sting of their rejection, the humiliation of having to beg my own children for help, still burned. But it was a different kind of fire now, a quiet ember of resolve rather than a raging inferno of despair. The surgery was done. The cancer was gone, and thanks to Thomas's foresight, my future, however long it may be, was secure. Theirs, however well, that was a different story. The next few days passed in a blur of medication, meals, and well wishes from the nurses. I felt stronger each day, the fog of anesthesia lifting, my mind sharpening. I began making calls, putting the next phase of my plan into motion. I contacted my lawyer, Mr. Henderson, outlining the changes I wanted made to my will and trust. "Are you absolutely sure about this, Mrs. Caldwell?" he'd asked, his voice laced with concern. "This is a significant alteration." "Absolutely certain," I replied firmly. "My children have made their priorities clear. It's time I made mine clear as well." He cleared his throat. "Very well. I'll prepare the necessary documents." I also spoke to my financial advisor, solidifying the arrangements to establish a charitable foundation in Thomas's name. I envisioned it supporting medical research, particularly for pancreatic cancer, offering a lifeline to those who, unlike me, might not have the resources to fight back. On the day of my discharge, Rebecca and Julian arrived to collect me. They fussed over me, offering hollow apologies and empty promises to visit more often. I accepted their gestures with a cool smile, a mask hiding the storm brewing beneath. "I appreciate you both coming," I said, my voice even and controlled. "But there's something I need to tell you." We settled into the back of their car, the silence heavy with unspoken words. I took a deep breath. "I've been meaning to tell you both about something rather important." Rebecca glanced at me in the rearview mirror. "What is it, Mom?" Julian, ever impatient, drummed his fingers on the steering wheel. "Just spit it out, Mom. We have a dinner reservation." "Dinner reservation? Of course. Remember when I asked for help with the surgery?" They both shifted uncomfortably. "Well," I continued, "I didn't tell you the whole story." Rebecca's eyes widened slightly. "What do you mean?" I paused, letting the tension build. "Your father," I said slowly, "was a very astute investor." Julian snorted. "We know, Mom. You told us 1,000,000 times." I met his gaze in the rearview mirror. "What I didn't tell you," I said, my voice hardening, "was the extent of his success. He left me considerably more than I let on." I reached into my purse and pulled out a small, neatly folded document. It was a copy of the revised trust, highlighting the establishment of the Thomas Caldwell Foundation and the drastic reduction in the inheritance my children would receive. "This," I said, handing the paper to Rebecca, "is what I've decided to do with the $12 million your father left me." The color drained from Rebecca's face. Julian's jaw dropped. The silence in the car was deafening. Finally, Rebecca stammered. "12 million?" I nodded. "Yes, Rebecca, 12 million. Enough to cover my surgery and secure my future. A future," I added pointedly, "that I will no longer be sharing with you." We pulled up to my house. I stepped out of the car, leaving the stunned silence behind me. As I walked towards the front door, I turned back to face them. "Oh, and Julian," I said, a small smile playing on my lips, "enjoy your Tesla." The door closed behind me, leaving them speechless in the driveway. The relief of the surgery, the satisfaction of my revenge, the quiet knowledge of my financial security all coalesced into a profound sense of peace. I was finally free. The afternoon sun slanted through the living room windows, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. I sat by the fireplace, the discharge papers from the hospital still clutched in my hand. The surgery had been successful. Dr. Ramirez had assured me the prognosis was excellent. "You're a fighter, Martha, he'd said, squeezing my shoulder. I expect to see you back here for your checkups. And that's it. I smiled, remembering his kind face. But a cold knot remained in my stomach. The surgery had been physically painful, yes, but the emotional pain inflicted by my children cut far deeper. Rebecca calling me delusional for believing they could scrape together a mere $34,000 still rang in my ears. I picked up my phone and dialed Rebecca's number. It went straight to voicemail. Rebecca, it's me. Call me back when you can, I said, keeping my voice neutral. I repeated the process with Marcus and Patricia, receiving similar non-answers. I wasn't surprised. They'd been avoiding me ever since I'd revealed the truth about Thomas's investments. I set the phone down on the side table and reached for the folder containing my lawyer's contact information. Mr. Henderson, I said when his assistant answered. It's Martha Blackwood. I'd like to schedule a meeting to discuss some changes to my will. We settled on a date the following week. The next few days passed in a quiet blur. I focused on my recovery, taking short walks in the garden and catching up on books I'd been meaning to read. The silence from my children was deafening. No calls, no texts, no visits. It was a stark contrast to the flurry of concerned messages they'd sent when they thought I was financially dependent on them. Their sudden silence confirmed what I'd long suspected. Their concern wasn't for me, but for their perceived inheritance. On the morning of my appointment with Mr. Henderson, I dressed carefully, choosing a crisp navy suit. I wanted to project strength and resolve. Good morning, Martha. Mr. Henderson greeted me warmly as I entered his office. Please, have a seat. I sat down, placing my handbag on the floor beside me. I've made some decisions regarding my estate. I began, and I need to update my will accordingly. Mr. Henderson nodded, pulling out a notepad and pen. I'm ready when you are. I took a deep breath. I want to create a charitable trust, I explained, dedicated to funding pancreatic cancer research. Mr. Henderson's eyebrows rose slightly. A very worthy cause, he commented, and the beneficiaries of your estate. This was the moment. I'm leaving a nominal sum to each of my children, I said, my voice steady, just enough to cover any outstanding debts they might have. The remainder of my estate, including the house, the investment portfolio, and the rental properties, will go directly to the trust. Mr. Henderson looked at me, a flicker of surprise in his eyes. Are you sure about this, Martha? He asked gently. This is a significant change from your previous will. I'm absolutely certain, I replied, meeting his gaze. My children have made it clear where their priorities lie. I need to ensure my legacy reflects mine. We spent the next hour finalizing the details. I left Mr. Henderson's office feeling a sense of calm I hadn't experienced in weeks. The weight of my children's betrayal had been lifted. I had taken control of my future and my fortune. They would learn a valuable lesson about the true meaning of family, even if it was a hard one. Back home, I poured myself a cup of tea and sat on the patio, overlooking the garden. The setting sun painted the sky in shades of orange and pink. My phone buzzed. It was Rebecca. I let it go to voicemail. A few minutes later, it buzzed again. Marcus. Again, I ignored it. Finally, Patricia called. I watched the phone ring, a small, almost imperceptible smile playing on my lips. I took a slow sip of my tea, the warmth spreading through me. Let them wonder. Let them worry. Let them finally understand the cost of their indifference. My phone continued to buzz, a persistent, irritating sound. I placed the cup back on the saucer, the gentle clink echoing the quiet satisfaction settling in my heart. The silence that followed, the silence I chose, was finally mine. The house, the garden, the future all mine. And for the first time in a long time, I felt truly at peace. I had my health, my wealth, and the quiet knowledge that I had finally taken back my life. Let the games begin.